go! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go! ¡Mamma mía! Here we go! Here we go! Ribbit. No! Ribbit. Here we go! Here we go!